Welcome to the Kickin with Daree show. I'm your host, Daree Allen Nieves, and today my next guest in my ColorVO Voices series is none other than Andrew Lander. Andrew Lander is an award-winning African-American voice actor that's based in Atlanta. Born and raised in DC, his passion for voice acting began behind a podium rather than on a stage. He's voiced e-learning modules for Coca-Cola and PsychHub, as well as articles for Apple News and commercials for Pandora. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
How's it going?
A lot of people kind of, when they're listening to their bio and they're not used to hearing someone talk about them, even if it's their own words, they're kind of like, oh, wait, is that me? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. How you doing? It's me. Because, we were talking before about humble brags and stuff like that. And sometimes it's just, you just feel extra humble.
Yeah, it makes my heart beat a little bit quicker. Like, oh my goodness, that is me? Is it? Okay, I guess so. We'll go with it.
Yeah, exactly. You have a really cool description on your website that I think I can relate to, but I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you explain it. You have a not quite urban, but distinctly Blackish sound. So what does that mean?
So what I try to do is introduce myself to people in multiple ways, because throughout my entire life, when I was a boy, this is the therapy part of the podcast. Uh, as a young kid growing up, unless I was around my family or around my Black friends, then you couldn't really assume what I was, and it's the same now. So in order to make sure, one, that people know who I am, I make sure to say, I'm a Black voice actor, an African American voice actor. Number two, they go, okay, but you don't kind of, something's going on with your face there. What's going? And before they can get that out of their mouth, that's when I go, hey, well, got you there. Slow it down. The way that I look and the way that I sound, let's describe it a little bit better. And that ABC show Blackish, I thought was a great way to, break that ice, because, if you've never seen the show, it's it's a Black suburban family where they're subverting, stereotypes. It's, I think the lead character, he's like the vice president, or he's part of the C-suite of an advertising firm, and his kids, they sound like they grow up in the suburbs. They don't sound like the way that a lot of people think Black people sound, which is very problematic as it is. So when I say that, I don't, not quite urban Blackish sound, I think about the kids on that show, and I think about how I just sound. I sound like this. My parents sound like this. I didn't grow up in like the inner city, but I grew up in DC proper, and in the neighborhood I grew up in, this is how we all sound. So I try to do that so that people will be like, okay, that's fascinating. Now I want to hear what you sound like, because either they have no idea what I'm talking about, or they have some sort of inkling and they want to get, a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many of us that can relate to that, especially, this past year has been kind of a whirlwind for all of us, because
Hmm.
a lot of things that have been really obvious to us all of our lives are just now becoming, white people are becoming woke and learning a little bit more about what it's like to, not only be a Black person or a person of color in entertainment, period, but a Black person or a person of color just in the world, in corporate, and all kinds of different kinds of jobs that are not corporate. And so, obviously people that are listening to this podcast for the first time or many times, they know that I sound like this, but we have, good old social media and everything else. I don't shy away from putting my picture on my website and having pictures on social media. And I think it's important to not be afraid to kind of own, who you are and have that confidence. And I think it comes in really handy, not just with, your own self-esteem and all of that woo-woo stuff that we talk about with personal development,
Hmm.
also when it comes to being confident when you're performing, and I know we're going to get to that shortly, talking about, deciding what genres that you wanted to work in and getting into it and kind of balancing that corporate life, and the blackishness that we are with VO. So tell us a little bit more about your background and journey. I know you said you're from DC, but tell us a little bit more.
So, my grandfather, he moved around a bunch of places for work. He ended up working for HUD in the 1970s and moved his entire family, him, his wife, and three kids, to DC. And my family stayed there just because they love the city so much. Don't know why. It's very expensive. That's not that's why I don't live there now. But they settled there, and growing up, my parents, they pushed me towards public speaking very, very early. So in elementary school, there were anytime there was a some sort of speaking engagement, whether it was in front of the school, like at in the auditorium, or even if it was like some sort of community thing, that my father would be like, okay, son, because that's what he sounded like. He had like a super deep voice, at least to me. He'd be like, okay, son, you can go up and speak to da, da, da. And I'd be like, Dad, do I have to? And he'd go, yes, speak clearly and speak distinctly, because that's what his father would tell him. And that's what I tell my kids now. But when I would do that, I would be scared completely. And then I developed some things along the way to kind of help me get over that fear. They always say, imagine everyone in your underpants. I think I saw that in a comic book once when I was a kid. And so I did that. And it made me a little bit more nervous. But I said, why
Right.
is everyone in their underpants? This is not normal. And I ended up getting more comfortable, not speaking to every single person, but speaking to everyone as one kind of amorphous blob made me more comfortable. So, there weren't as many eyes on me. And then over time, like in the professional world, finding that, well, I can talk to individual people, and it's not as scary to do that, and kind of interact with people while I'm speaking to everybody. And so one of the ways I did that was I worked for a real estate agency in the DC area. And real estate agents are very much like voice actors, where they're all individual businesses. And so being able to talk to them one on one while also talking to them behind the podium as a group, it again, it's just one of those things that helped me do what you're supposed to do in voice acting, which is think of that one person you're trying to talk to, and talk to them. And without getting too far into it, that's kind of like the shortened story of my life, and how my upbringing and then the work environment kind of led me to this. Hey, there's this thing called voice acting, and it's sort of similar to to public speaking.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people want to know how VO relates to public speaking as well as podcasting. And I think it's very natural to move between the three, if you have the knack or you're willing to learn those techniques. I know when I started doing public speaking as an adult, it was maybe around 2004 or 2002, something like that. I was back in the day when, corporate companies were like really a lot more giving with traveling and training and conferences. I used to go to conferences and speak at conferences all the time.
Hmm.
And then eventually I wanted to speak more, but didn't always have the opportunities. So I joined Toastmasters, not because I was afraid to speak in public, but many people are. So that's a tip for those of you that feel like they want to improve their public speaking. Toastmasters. It's very inexpensive. Everyone that's there is very encouraging, and it's also a great way to enhance your leadership and get involved in the community, because I also ran a leadership program with Toastmasters at a high school back in the day. So I did that, but I could totally relate, Andrew, to what you're talking about as a kid, because for me, it wasn't my dad doing it. My mom was the one, and she always took us to church ever since like the day I was born. And so anytime that there was a youth program, an Easter play, reading the announcements at the front, any of that stuff, church was the main place that I got it. You're nodding your head, so That was
Yeah.
you too?
Well, not so much church, but I guess I'm nodding my head and kind of rocking back and forth in the fetal position because I can feel the I can feel the stress. Like, I remember that. I remember being pushed into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good thing, and I'm very I guess you do too because you're, encouraging your kids to do it too. So yeah, anybody out here who is either unsure of their public speaking abilities and want to get better or afraid, and maybe that idea of imagining people in their underwear isn't so helpful, Toastmasters might be a bet for you to give it a try. And of course, it's 2021. We're not doing things in person right now, but you can do them on video. So moving on, um, you're involved with something called Blue Wave Voiceover. What is
That's right.
that?
So, Blue Wave Voiceover is this collective of voice actors who are trying to push for, or I guess try to, and succeeded. The blue wave of, it's a political voice actor group. So, we voice for progressive and liberal causes, as well as candidates. And it's something that I got involved with in September after Maria Pendolino reached out to me, and they needed to fit a certain voice, just like any agency. They're not an agency, but they needed a particular type of voice. And I had reached out to her for something else earlier in the year about a millennial voiceover, because she has that property as well, that website. Um, because I had reached out to her and said, "Hey, I know you have a millennial voiceover thing going on. I think I heard about it on a podcast. Is that something where you have a roster? I don't know." And somebody had responded, "Oh yeah, we're good." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And then of course I emailed again because I try to keep up on the emails, and I want to be persistent. And I was like, "Hey, I know you said that that was something that you were good with, but are you really good with it?" And I think they
Yeah.
said the same thing. But months later, I guess she was like, "Who was that annoying person who reached out to me twice after I said I was good?" I'm just paraphrasing. I don't think that's something that she actually said, but she had reached out to me again and was like, "Hey, you know, uh, do you want to send me this file, this audition?" And I said, "Sure." And I guess she liked it, and so I ended up in this group. So during the political season, between September and November, and then also extending into January with the Georgia runoffs, I was involved in this group where, if there was anyone who was searching for a voice of color, or um, uh, any gender or age group, then they could come to this site and find these voice actors, including myself, who could voice these messages for political campaigns.
hmm Yeah, that's really important. And again, we became like uber popular last year, like
Yes,
so
we did.
popular. And so we were sought out quite a bit. I remember looking for, I think in 2018 or 2019, J. Michael Collins was really pushing, like on his blog. And whenever he would speak, he'd say, listen, if I could reincarnate myself right now, I would come back as a black woman or a black man so I could do some promos and do some political because you guys are hot right now. And I'm paraphrasing, but only slightly, only slightly. He was a
uh,
little more energetic than I am right now. But it was funny. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The
Not
Blue
too many white folks will say that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I was at VO Atlanta in 2019, and, Jeff Howell, I think is his name. He's a perennial speaker there about promos, and Jeff mentioned the same thing. He said, "Listen, it's your time right now. If you're a white guy like me, step back. It's their time right now," basically. And I remember writing that down. So, even though I'm not really getting into promos or anything at this point. So, working in corporate America as you do, being Blackish and all that, um, how has that kind of translated itself as you started in VO? Because you've only been doing VO for a couple years now.
That's
Um,
correct.
And so it's like you're doing all these wonderful things, but you're balancing them both. You know, you're like kind of like me, where you have a full-time job doing that, but you're also doing this a bit on the side, like pretty well.
Mhm.
So how did your story go as far as, being able to meld those two worlds?
So melding those 2 worlds was an exercise in figuring out what I am not proficient at, and that is the character, animation, video games, and when I say not proficient, I mean not proficient yet. So at some point, I'm gonna get there, but putting on the mask, putting on the bell bottoms, putting on the clown nose, and really just going all out, whew, that's hard for me to do because I I can be and am kind of a serious person. It's kinda hard for me to, like, you know, be super light. I'm medium. I'm just medium roast coffee, you know? You know, I when I was, doing a workout session, you know, there are people who are just kinda going out there and playing around, and I remember thinking, "Why isn't everyone just reading the script? Why is everyone just kinda joking around?" And then I had to take a step back and be like, "Because this is how acting happens, people are doing fun things." And so I took, I did my business plan, around, like, November of last year to prepare for the coming year, and I wrote down that I only have so much time in the day, as someone who works in the corporate world and someone who's doing voiceover part time. And I looked at all of the things that I booked throughout the year, and I've looked at all of the things that I tried really hard to do, but it took me a lot of time. Like I spent 90 minutes with Everett Oliver, doing a few characters, and he really had to get these characters out of me and for me to go like completely off the wall. In fact, I had to get a new booth because he said, "You know what, your booth is too small, you can't move your arms, you can't do anything." And I'm sitting there like this, like, "Oh, I usually do my corporate stuff like this, I think I'm okay." But I
Yeah.
wasn't built for that, like, not, uh, for me, personally, and then also the booth. So I had to write down, okay, when it comes to animation and anime and stuff like that, all that is fun. I love all of that stuff. But if unless it's going to be something that's completely fun and, like, not paid, it's something that I'm doing with colleagues, I can't invest time in it. I can only invest time in the things that I know that I'm good at. And what I'm good at is being, the corporate guy, not the stuffy corporate guy, but the business casual corporate
Mhm.
guy. So the explainers, the e-learning, the corporate narration, that's the bread and butter for me. And commercials, that's kind of like my bridge there because you can have fun and you can do character stuff occasionally and kind of be a little nutty. But it's not, a character who, has horns and a pitchfork and, is I'm so unimaginative. I can't even think of the character. That's how terrible it is. But with the other ones, you can be, your suit and tie kind of person or, unbutton the tie a little bit. Not that ties have buttons, but you know what I mean, loosen it up a little bit. Um, so in doing that business plan, I said, if I'm going to be good at what I'm good at, I have to, trim the fat. I got to take some of the things away that I know that down the line maybe I can do. But as someone who has to be a father, be a husband, and be a good employee. I, you know, long story short, I don't have time for it. I got time for it.
I think that's a really important point, is to know what you're good at, what you're gifted at out the gate, and of course, you can always add more genres and more tools to your repertoire as you continue in your profession, as you continue to get that coaching and do the workouts, for those of you that don't know, workouts are basically another way of kinda saying acting practice, it's voice acting practice, and so if you have ever done improv or other kinds of acting classes, you will do certain kinds of acting things mostly in person. But workouts are our way of doing that with VO. And so I used to do a lot of workouts with Global Voice Acting Academy. I think my first 3 years, 2 to 3 years, in the business, I was doing a lot of workouts, and both of the Daves and Sean can tell you that I was way different in the beginning as far as that stiffness and that, unwillingness to just kinda loosen up and just do my thing and smile. That was the number one thing that they would always say to me, "Daree, technically that was perfect. Now smile. Now act like you like it. Act like you mean what you're saying." And I'm like, "Ah," and part of it was me getting out of my own head because I'm sitting there and we're on the Zoom before everyone else knew what Zoom was. Sitting on the Zoom and I'm like, people are looking at me. This is not normal. Like when you're acting, obviously everyone is looking at you and everyone is judging you. That's the way
Mhm.
it goes. But with voice acting, you're usually in an enclosed space with no one around, no one is watching. So it is a little easier to be free. And so for me, I don't know about you, but I had to mentally kind of get out of that thing where it's like, okay, people are watching me and they're judging me or whatever. And so I can't really go all out the way that I would if I was, doing an audition by myself.
Yep. I know how you feel. And they just told a black woman to smile more, and that's not something you do, you know?
Wait a minute.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, on the street, yeah, that's a whole nother podcast right there. Okay. Smile, girl. No.
Yeah, like, "You're not smiling enough. Be nicer." Like,
I and
"Okay."
I and strangely enough, I have never interpreted it that way, but once I started taking their advice, something really magical happened, Andrew. I started
Mm.
booking like a mug. I started booking, okay? It works, you guys. When your coaches tell you things, listen. And listen to at least 80% of it because 'cause they've probably been doing it longer than you and they know something. What is the biggest challenge? I just talked about my challenge. What's one of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome, starting and running this VO business?
So, one of the biggest challenges, was, like you mentioned, actually just getting out of my own head. And there was an audition, a live audition that I did. It was my first live audition, and true to your point about not being able to feel it when you have somebody listening, oh boy, that was the worst experience that I've had. So I got this call and they were like, "Okay, can you do this live audition?" And I said, "Sure, and no problem. It's an audition, not a big deal." It was on the weekend. I'm like, "Yes, I got time." And then I get on there, and there was a there was a lot of stuff that I had to do beforehand because there was a lot of naming of the files that was very specific, and you do have to name the files in a particular way whenever you're submitting an audition. But this one was a bit different. I had to do it right there on a piece of paper, and they were telling me how to name it right then and there. And there were a bunch of other notes to do, and usually that wouldn't put me out of my headspace, but it did. It really put me out of exactly what I was going to be doing because we spent about 5 minutes going over it, and then they were like, "Okay, you're on." And I was like, and I tried to do it, and she stops me halfway through and says, "You sound really announcery. Can you do it again?" And I was like, "Uh-oh, this is not good." And it was a slippery slope of just awful announcery. Ooh, long story short, she cut it short, and I had to go back upstairs, and it was just that was not fun at all, and that had never happened to me. And so what I did was I said, "You know what? Forget that. Don't forget it, but forget that. I'm going to call up some coaches, and I'm going to get this conversational thing down." And
Mhm.
so I ended up working with Dave Fenoy for 5 sessions, and there was some transformation there. I was definitely feeling it more. I was reviewing some of the or the points in the sessions where he was like, okay, that's it, keep doing that, and just reviewing that. And then it must have been uh a couple weeks ago, so it was still around the holidays, but it was a couple weeks ago, and I was on a session, and someone said to me, you know what, that definitely has a good conversational feel. And I was like, that's it, I think I got it, I think I got it back. So I went from just feeling so bad about not being able to get this audition because I was taken out of my headspace, and excuses, 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 to saying, you know what, I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to buckle down and spend some weeks with one of the masters of this industry, and figure this thing out, because this is not ending here. This isn't the end of me. you know
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we do, really, really miss and not hit. And all of those are definitely learning experiences. Because of course we don't ever want to like look unprofessional or feel again a lack of confidence or whatever, but it happens to the best of us. It really does. Even when you're doing it for a while, you can sometimes get complacent about, I've got this money voice, I've got this rhythm, I know how to knock this out. Even the things that you do really well where you don't need as much coaching on those things. um and so it's always good to kind of play around and do something a little different, and continuously learning. We haven't really mentioned that much yet, but just continuously practicing, and even just reading aloud. When people say to me, how do you get good at voiceover, like what can you do that doesn't require money, like are there things that I could be doing in the meantime or the in between time? And I'm like, yes, read something aloud every single day. I don't care if it's a cereal box, if it's a can of soup, if it's a billboard when you're not driving and you're going by and reading something. Signs in the doctor's office, because Lord knows they leave you in there long enough that you can read everything that they've got on the wall.
hmm
Read aloud every day, because that's going to help with your sight reading. That's going to help with your cold reading. That is just a perfect way and a free way, but it takes effort and time. And a lot of people, they get good at something, or they kind of overlook it because, it's just reading. Well, VO, as you and I both know really well, is more than just reading. So that's just a way for you to get better and be able to also be able to identify those issues with scripts, because when scripts are grammatically incorrect, I don't know about you, but I just keep stumbling and stumbling and stumbling. Even if they say, we're going to change this word to this. If I'm
hmm
on my trusty iPad right here, I'll probably mess up a couple more times in the session before we get it right, because, my brain is still processing that comma or whatever's not supposed to be there. I've been doing voiceovers now for a few years, but I actually sat on this idea for over 10 years. 10 years of thinking about it, wondering, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. I don't know how to break in. What do I do? I don't know anybody that does that. All these different doubts, and doing Google searches and coming up with way too much information and not knowing where to start. So it's time for me to pay it forward, and I thought I would help others who keep asking me and DMing me, how do I get started? If you want to share your voice with the world and you're interested in starting a voiceover career or just trying to understand what it takes to get started, I can help you. I created a free resource guide that has links to courses, training, blogs, Facebook groups, and tons of things that'll give you good information to get started and not overwhelm you. These are resources that I've curated myself, and they've served me well as I've started on this journey. Want yours? Sign up and get yours free at bit.ly/Daree voiceover resource. bit.ly/Daree voiceover resource. If you already know this is something you want to do, you can just go straight to the e-course at bit.ly/vocality-e-course. Who are the people in your life that have helped you the most in your career thus far?
Ooh, so I'm going to say 100% my wife, because in bringing up voice acting to her, she definitely helped me truly get exactly what I wanted to do with this, because it basically boiled down to, look, if you're going to spend this much time on this thing, make sure that there's a plan for it. And so that business plan that I had mentioned, this was the second business plan that I had done. The first one wasn't so much for me as it was for her, because I wanted to have a plan. I wanted to show her that, if I was going to be practicing and spending all this money on equipment and,
Yeah.
setting this thing up, and like, what are you doing to in our house? Setting all this stuff up, that there needs to be some sort of payoff, for lack of a better term. You can never really know how much you're going to make in this industry, um, and that's for anything, really. But every business has a business plan. Uh, looking at competition or colleagues, and seeing uh, what the industry is generally paying folks, looking at the GVAA, what you call it, the GVAA rate sheet,
Mhm.
um, to get an idea of what people are generally paying out, and also seeing, like, the people who are doing this part time. Okay, can you estimate, how much they're making per month on average? The people that are doing it full time, what are they doing with their finances? How are they, setting up their businesses? I think people get a bit wishy-washy about, you know the money side of it, because I don't think people want to. I'll put it like this: it's like when you tell your kid you should go to college. Now, that could open up a whole can of worms of people saying, well, you don't actually need college to be successful. Look at this guy over here. He owns his own plumbing company and he didn't go to college. And it's like, yes, get that. But I'm about the idea that I want to take the least amount of time for success. Actually, that's not the best way to put it. It's not the least amount of time for success. I just want to do it in a smart way. I don't want to work harder. I want to work smarter. And so if there's a path that's so circuitous where, I have to just go winding down this path and high five this person, and then, you know, do some jumping jacks over here, or if I can just take a straight line where most people have generally succeeded, then I'm not flashy, Daree. I'm boring. I'm just gonna go down that straight line, because I see other people have taken it, and in a general sense, more people have been successful in doing it this way than the other way. I'm not saying that you can't take that road that, other people can take, but you know, I'm just gonna keep it straight, and try to do it in the simplest way that other people have done it before. So, my wife, for sure, for her patience, and then also for getting me on, making sure that my business plan was just on point. And then also the VO community. Um, Number one, the African American voice actor database community. I got on there in very early on in my career, and just being a part of that community has helped me tons when it comes to knowledge and just hearing about opportunities, and the GVAA community, because I'm a member there. In fact, the first place we met was there. I don't know if you remember, but it was a workout. It was one of the
Yes, I
first
do.
workouts. You do?
Totally.
It was one of
Totally,
the first
because
workouts that I
during
did.
yeah, totally, and shortly thereafter, um, you joined you were we were in the workout together, and then I wanna say within a couple of weeks, you joined that Facebook group that you mentioned, the African American Voice Actors, group, which if you are Black and you are into VO or want to be in VO, It's an open invitation for you to
Do it.
join it.
Do it.
It's Facebook, so it's free. And as a matter of fact, right now, the database, having a listing and a profile on that database, which is run by the great Brian Howard, is also free. And we have both been contacted through that database at different times and many others.
Oh, yes.
So that's just a plug for the African American Voice Actors database. If you want to hire people that are African American to do voiceovers, go to the African American Voice Actors database.
Please.
Um, I don't have the URL on me right now, but I will put a link in the show notes. But I'm pretty sure that if you type in what I said, AAVAD, you will find it at the top because we are like the only group there. Um, and I get what you're saying as far as, the business aspects. We've talked about that in other ColorVO series as well, where we talked about, having your CRM, having goals, deciding, okay, because this is a business. Now, for those of you that are listening and you're like, you know what, it's not that serious to me. This is just a hobby. You can ignore what I'm going to say for the next 30 seconds. Everybody else pay attention. If you're doing a VO business, okay, it's a business and it's not a hobby, or you want it to eventually become known as a business by the IRS's standards and everyone else, where you're making more money than what you are investing eventually. And so you want to have either some spreadsheets or an actual CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management System. It's a way to keep all of your contacts, all of the clients you've worked for, track your income, track your expenses. If you have a CRM, it actually gives you automatic reminders to follow up with people that you haven't heard from or to check invoices and so on and so on and so on. It helps you run your business. And I'm not saying that if you do this, you can do it all yourself and you don't need a virtual assistant or anyone else, but you can do it all yourself, especially at first. So the CRM that I like to use, one last plug, the CRM I like to use is called Voice Overview, which is a CRM that was created by our friend Danny States. And Danny is a voice actor and she made it for voice actors. So you can use HubSpot, you can use Nimble, Close, there's plenty of them out there. But Voice Overview is just for voice actors. And so there's some very specific things in that particular program that are not available in other tools and products, just in general.
I mean, and that makes sense because I mean, I have to practice what I preach because I used to be in marketing, and so that's why this part of the industry, everyone's like, oh, I hate marketing, and I go, I love it, I love marketing. All you got to do is you tell them, you tell them again, and you tell them what you told them, and then you remind everybody what you just did. That's all
Yep.
marketing is. Just it's
Mhm.
he who speaks or she who speaks to the most people the most times wins. Like
Yeah,
you
because people we're all forgettable. And so
yeah.
we have to keep like people will be like, and I've done this too in the past. I've been like, oh man, I don't want to bother them. I'm not going to keep emailing. No,
Mm-mm.
keep doing it because guess
Pester.
what? While you're not, there's a whole bunch of other people that are, and they're getting that coin.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And that just like with with the millennial voiceover group. I mean, I had reached out to them a couple times and it's I hope that or I think that that's maybe what kept me top of mind. I don't know. But
Yeah.
just and you never know. Like we had talked about, the voice actor database and those databases, whether it's Backstage or AAVADB or Production Hub or
Mhm. Oh, for
wherever,
sure.
if you're in so many places, then somebody on Google's gonna find you. And
Voice
the
123 has been my thing. It
yeah,
doesn't matter if I'm like, have a paying membership or a free one, man. It never fails. I don't go more than 3 days without getting hit up from Voice 123, regardless of an audition or even like sometimes people just be like, "I like this particular thing that you did, and can you do that for me?" And they didn't even post the audition or nothing. They're just like, "I just want you to have it." And I'd be like,
love that.
"Okay."
Look, I'll tell you this about the pay to plays. I know I said earlier that I like to go the the route that everyone else is going because it's the path of least resistance. And yes, you want to take a less trodden route when it comes to trying out new things, and you have to take everything with a grain of salt, and you kind of have to know where all of this advice can be useful, and then where all of it just doesn't work for you. But so many people said, hey, you really shouldn't use, or not, they didn't say you shouldn't use it. They said, look, if you're going to spend money on Voice 123 or voices.com, you're better off spending your money doing this, that, and the other thing. And I said, I understand that. And then they also said, you know, not too many people will find success with it because you're competing against so many different people. You're just starting out. And I was like, but I think I'm all right. I think I'll get it. I think I have enough to be able to be dangerous, right? And because Voice 123, they, at least I think they still have it, but they had something where you can just back out after a month if it wasn't working for you. I said, look, I'm going to give myself 30 days, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if I book something and it pays for itself, then I'm going to keep on
Yeah.
doing it, because it's more than just, for me, pay to play. It's I could get a repeat customer. I could form a relationship with a bunch of people where it's just not a one-off.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, you have the SEO, where I know I've searched my name and my website comes up, but so does Voice 123. And if someone finds me on Voice
Yes.
123 and messages me, or if someone finds me on my website and messages me, it it doesn't matter, as because at the end of the day, if I get the job, I get the job. But I want to make sure I'm in as many places as possible for people to find me, so that they don't look for, Andrew Lander and see, somebody else, or they don't look for uh, DC native black voice actor, who's got no hair
Right.
on top of his
Those
head.
keywords,
And
man,
they
we need to talk about that for sure, and
yeah.
it's like you said, like, you wanna be found. That's something where you didn't have to make a cold call or write an email.
Hmm.
You didn't have to do nothing. You just was living your life. And somebody came along and said, "Hey,
Yes, I
are
love
you
it.
available?" You can't beat that.
Right.
Oh
Oh man.
gosh. So tell us about, some of the things that you've got coming up. I don't wanna steal your thunder, so I'm gonna let you tell it.
So you mentioned Damon, and Damon is actually a good colleague of mine, as well. So now I'm running with the people who really feel me. So I'm happy that I can do that now, as opposed to when I was a kid. But some of the stuff I'm doing now, actually, one of the things was with a group that I'm in with Damon, just like a regular workout group, chop it up group mainly. And it was as a Kwanzaa deity. So during the month of, or during the Kwanzaa holiday, I played Umoja, which is the first day of Kwanzaa for unity. And Joshua Evans, who's also in that group, and he has a lot of great content, as Talk Story to Me. That's his moniker, or his name. And he created this play, or this vocal play, where you had the 7 days of Kwanzaa, but they were all represented by some sort of otherworldly deity that's trying to teach this wayward mortal about what the principle means, based on the things that he's going through. And it's funny, and there's a lot of other people who are in it, including Damon. So that's one of the things that I was in recently. And if you pop on Pandora, you'll hear me there as well, depending on what region you're in. It's not, I don't think it's anything national, but you may hear me on there. And other than that, you won't hear me, because it's a lot of e-learning. It's a lot of corporate narration, and all that's internal. So unless you're working at a particular company, then you're not going to hear me, tell you what to do.
Do you wanna also talk about the Batman project?
Yeah, so that's actually the first thing that I did with that same group. It was, and is, because it's still going on, a vocal play that was directed this time by Damon Allums, and it's episodic, and it takes the best parts of Batman, and we or he scripts it up, and the first episode was me being Ra's al Ghul, the sinister leader of the League of Assassins, and so I play as him. I pop out of the this pool of immortality. I forget the name of it, and Damon's there as Batman, and that's one of the things, along with the Kwanzaa deity play, that I will do if it's for fun.
Now, we have come to the end of our time together. I know this is so sad. This is so sad.
Oh, man.
But my closing questions. Number 1, how do you define success?
Whew, for me, I gave that a lot of thought. How do I define success? There's so many ways. I mean, you could think about it financially. You can think about it, how you feel when you wake up in the morning. Um, Again, I'm gonna keep it really boring, Daree, just really boring. If for me, success would be having something on the calendar, VO related, from somebody else, like a session, or you and I talking, or something like that, every day on the calendar, every weekday. I love my weekends. Um, where if somebody were to call me and be like, "Hey, can you do a session?" Then I'd have to be like, "Let me check my calendar." Yes, but let me check my calendar so I can fit you in. You know,
Right.
because right now, like, I'm getting enough where it's like I'm feeling good that I'm busy, like, I'm doing a lot of stuff. I have to prioritize, but so I'm not at a point right now where, like, I'm freaking out and there's not enough time in the day. There's still time in the day. I'm able to, to do my job, and I'm able to do, the 9 to 5. I'm able to do voice actor. I haven't gotten to a point where, things are overflowing. But to me, success would be to see that calendar just filled to the brim with stuff. And for me to be like, you know what? I need to start really thinking about some advanced time management, because right now it's just basic stuff. But if I can fill up that calendar, then that to me is success.
Awesome. And lastly, what advice would you give to your younger self?
You know, because I started out behind the podium, actually, it's not because I started out behind the podium. The podium was just a way for me to express myself, and to um, now, this is the origin story of my voice acting. But I really wish that I had done some acting as a kid. The closest thing to acting that I did was being a Hershey's Kiss in my first grade Nutcracker play. I don't remember anything about it. There was tinfoil. That's about it. um, and I think one of the reasons why I didn't do acting was because, just like a lot of kids, I didn't think it was cool. I didn't want to um, stick out so much. Um, in elementary school, I was very keen on who got picked on, you know? And so I said, you know what? I'm doing well with my grades, but I don't want to be, in the toilet or in the locker, stuck in there. So, like, I started playing football at recess and kind of got a bit of respect for that. Um, and when it came to acting, I saw the acting kids and I was like, yeah, that's not really down with that. I saw the AV kids, videography and stuff like that. I was way more interested in that. And I never got into it because I was like, you know what? Something in the back of my head said, I don't think I want to run with that group. I think if I could go back in time, I'd say, look, the group that you run with is the group who is interested in the things that you are interested in. If the people that you're running with aren't interested in the things that you're interested in, then why are you running with them in the first place? You will have way more self-fulfillment, and you'll be a lot happier if you're not trying to fake it. So stop faking it, and just hang with the kids that are doing, little short movies, hang with the kids that are doing a little bit of theater, and you may be a little bit more buttoned up than they are, not completely out there, but you're going to find some people in that group who, are going to want to talk about the Matrix and anime for 5 hours on end, you know, which is something I can still do, but I wish I could have told my younger self that, and I think I still would have been awkward, but I would have had an awkward group of people to hang out with, and it would have been, I don't know, I think I'd feel a lot better about it.
Well, I think hopefully Damon will not take offense to that. Our friend Damon Allums, who was our first ColorVO guest, with the whole anime thing and being weird and stuff. I think we all have that in common, though. We all,
We're all weird.
we're all misfits or nerds or blurs or whatever you want to call it. And, it's just because there's a stigma of, and sadly it continues, if you're Black and God forbid you're smart too, or it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Wow.
I know.
He's so well spoken. She's so well spoken. It's
Well, why
like,
shouldn't I be, right?
okay. Thanks, I think.
Right.
Tell us where we can connect with you on social media because you are on it. Somehow you find the time to use it. I see you. Tell everyone where they can follow you and connect.
You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Lander. You could see me on the on your Twitter monthly, or is a monthly
Yeah, VO
together?
Live Chat is every month on the third Thursday of the month, and you have finally joined. I think that's so funny that you mentioned that because you finally joined, like for the first or second time. It's like, hey, yeah, you can find me there. No, that's cool. Yeah, thank you.
It is really awesome. And so what you provide to the Twitter community and to the VO community is amazing. I don't know how you find time for that. So
Woo.
that's great. So you can find me on Twitter there. You can find me on Instagram at Andrew Lander VO. I'm also on Clubhouse trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing at Andrew Lander. That is a great resource. I have no idea how people are finding the time, because I don't know if you've been on there, right? People are on there for like 8 hours straight, just chopping it up and having a good time.
I think that this is a period of life where people really need connection. They're looking for something new and they literally want to be heard. Literally. Well, Andrew, we will be following you. Again, if you didn't catch all of that, just check the show notes. We got his Instagram, we got everything. He's just really high up on Clubhouse right now, y'all. So just check the show notes. You can get all the links and everything. And I just want to say thank you, Andrew, for meeting with me. I know that you asked to be on the podcast, but it's so hard to, always find people that are willing to share their journey. So many people feel like, because I haven't made this much, I'm not a millionaire in this business or whatever. Maybe I don't have anything to share. Maybe my story's not relevant. And so your story, just like all the other ones in this series, are just proof that you don't have to necessarily feel like you've made it in order to really be successful and to be doing something where not only are you fulfilling something personally that you want to do and enjoying it, but that you're providing for your family and you're inspiring others. So again, I want to thank you for being here.
Daree, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.